At 94, Angie Dickinson finally tells the truth about Ricky Nelson. Angie Dickinson was born Angeline Brown on September 30th, 1931 in Combe, North Dakota. She grew up during the Great Depression in a simple, hard-working family. Her father worked as a newspaper editor and publisher, and from him she got a sharp mind, a curiosity about the world, and a love for words and ideas. When the family moved to California, Dickinson's world got bigger, and she soon showed a natural grace and charm that made her stand out from other kids her age. Angie Dickinson didn't plan to become a movie star at first. She went to Glendale Community College and later Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles, where she studied business and drama. And it was almost by accident that her career started. A beauty contest appearance on television in the early 1950s led to a contract with Columbia Pictures, launching her into Hollywood at a time when the big studios still ran everything. What made Dickinson special early on was not just her beautiful looks, though she was definitely glamorous, but her down-to-earth, smart personality. She showed warmth, wit, and real emotion, qualities that made audiences feel she was someone they could know, not just admire from far away. Her early movie work throughout the 1950s showed steady growth as she moved from small supporting roles to bigger parts. A major turning point came with Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo in 1959, in which she starred opposite John Wayne and Dean Martin. As Feathers, a confident and attractive saloon singer, Dickinson gave a performance that was both playful and strong, showing a woman who could stand up among powerful men without giving up her femininity or independence. The role made her a star and sealed her reputation as an actress who could blend toughness with vulnerability, a combination that would become her trademark. Throughout the 1960s, Angie Dickinson had a busy and varied film career. She appeared in dramas, westerns, comedies, and thrillers, refusing to be stuck in just one type. Films such as Ocean's 11 in 1960, The Killers in 1964, and Point Blank in 1967 showed her versatility and willingness to take chances. In Point Blank, her performance opposite Lee Marvin was particularly striking, marked by emotional control and psychological depth that reflected the changing style of American cinema. Dickinson adapted gracefully to this shift, proving she could succeed in both the polished studio productions of the 1950s and the grittier, more thoughtful films of the late 1960s. While her film career flourished, Angie Dickinson also became a powerful presence on television, where she would make history. In 1974, she starred in Policewoman, becoming the first woman to lead a successful television drama series as a police officer. At a time when female characters were often given secondary or decorative roles, Dickinson's portrayal of Sergeant Suzanne Pepper Anderson was groundbreaking. She played the character with authority, intelligence, and empathy, presenting a woman who was professional, capable, and courageous while still being emotionally human. The series was a major hit and had a lasting cultural impact, inspiring future generations of female-led crime dramas and helping to open doors for women in television storytelling. As the years went by, Angie Dickinson chose her roles more carefully, appearing in notable films such as Dressed to Kill in 1980, which introduced her to a new generation of audiences and reaffirmed her fearless approach to acting. Even as Hollywood changed and roles for women of her generation became rarer, Dickinson remained respected and admired, not only for her talent, but for her integrity and authenticity. She never relied only on nostalgia. Instead, she allowed her body of work to speak for itself. By the early 1990s, she had reached a stage in her career where she no longer needed to prove anything. Yet, she continued to surprise audiences by fearlessly reinventing herself in bold, often unsettling roles. In ABC's provocative miniseries Wild Palms in 1993, produced by Oliver Stone, she delivered one of her most chilling performances as a sadistic militant sister of Senator Tony Kreutzer, portrayed with icy authority by Robert Loggia. The role allowed her to shed any lingering glamour associated with her earlier screen image and embrace something darker, more political, and deeply unsettling. Her presence in Wild Palms added an emotional intensity and moral ambiguity that stayed with viewers long after the credits rolled, reinforcing her reputation as an actress unafraid to venture into controversial territory. That same year, she took another dramatic turn by starring as a ruthless Montana spa owner in Gus Van Sant's Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, sharing the screen with Uma Thurman. In a film known for its eccentric tone and offbeat sensibility, her performance stood out for its sharp edges and unapologetic ferocity. She showed power, entitlement, and cruelty with a confidence that made the character both fascinating and disturbing. Rather than soften the role, she leaned fully into its excesses, once again showing her willingness to challenge audience expectations and take creative risks at a point in her career when many of her peers were playing it safe. Off-screen, her independence was just as striking. In November that same year, she made headlines when she suddenly walked off the set of Proposes Is Your Life television special meant to celebrate her career. Unwilling to participate in a format she felt misrepresented her or reduce her life to sentimental spectacle, she refused to go along with the production. The moment became a symbol of her fierce self-respect and her refusal to allow Hollywood or television to define her story on its own terms. Her career momentum continued into the mid-1990s with a series of high-profile and sharply contrasting roles. In 1995, director Sidney Pollack cast her as a formidable prospective mother-in-law of Greg Kinnear in Sabrina, the romantic comedy starring Harrison Ford, and a modern remake of Billy Wilder's beloved classic. With impeccable timing and understated authority, she brought sophistication and bite to the role, proving once again that she could elevate even a supporting character into something memorable. That same year, she appeared as Burt Reynolds' wife in the psychological thriller The Maddening, adding emotional weight and tension to the story, while also playing the sharp-tongued mother of Rick Aiello and Robert Cuxili in the National Lampoon comedy, The Dorm That Dripped Blood. Moving effortlessly between drama and broad comedy, she showcased her remarkable range and adaptability, slipping into each role with a confidence born of decades of experience. In 1997, she delighted television audiences with sly, self-aware turn on HBO's The Larry Sanders Show. In the episode aptly titled Artie and Angie and Hank and Hercules, she reunited with Rip Torrance Artie, playing an old flame whose seductive spark still burned brightly. The performance was both playful and touching, blending humor, nostalgia, and unmistakable chemistry. It served as yet another reminder that her screen presence, whether menacing, comedic, or seductive, remained as compelling as ever, cementing her status as a true Hollywood original who continued to command attention well into the later chapters of her career. Dickinson's personal life unfolded with the same mix of glamour, complexity, and quiet strength that marked her public career. In 1952, she married Gene Dickinson, a former college football player whose life after sports took him into the growing world of electronics. At the time, the match seemed to promise stability and conventional happiness. Yet, the realities of two ambitious lives gradually pulled them in different directions. Although their marriage officially lasted until 1960, the couple had separated 4 years earlier in 1956, signaling the emotional distance that had already taken hold. Despite the marriage ending, Dickinson chose to keep her married name after the divorce, a decision that reflected both personal identity and professional continuity during a period when women in the public eye often face pressure to redefine themselves after marital change. During these years, Dickinson's world expanded far beyond Hollywood. She formed a close and intellectually stimulating friendship with the influential economist John Kenneth Galbraith and his wife Kitty Galbraith. Their relationship opened doors to a wider cultural and political world, introducing Dickinson to conversations and experiences far removed from the film sets and sound stages of her career. Her visits with the Galbraiths, as well as her extensive travels while John Kenneth Galbraith served as U.S. ambassador to India, left a lasting impression. These journeys, rich with observation and insight, were later vividly described in Galbraith's memoirs, Ambassador's Journal, and A Life in Our Times, where Dickinson appears not merely as a celebrity companion, but as a curious, engaged presence in a world of diplomacy and global affairs. A new chapter in her life began in 1965 when Dickinson married renowned composer Burt Bacharach, one of the most celebrated and influential musical talents of his generation. Their union brought together two highly creative spirits, each working at the peak of their respective fields. For 16 years, they shared a marriage shaped by artistic passion, professional demands, and the pressures that often come with life in the public eye. As time passed, the relationship grew more complicated, and toward the later years of their marriage, they experienced a period of separation during which both dated other people. Even so, their bond endured longer than many Hollywood marriages, reflecting a deep, if imperfect, connection. On July 12, 1966, Dickinson and Bacharach welcomed their daughter Nikki, whose life would deeply affect both parents. Nikki was autistic, and her challenges brought emotional strain and deep concern, particularly at a time when understanding and support for autism were far more limited than they are today. Her struggles continued into adulthood, and her tragic death by suicide on January 4th, 2007 cast a long shadow over Dickinson's later years, marking one of the most painful chapters of her life. The loss was a reminder of the private grief that can exist behind even the most bright public personas. Burt Bacharach himself passed away in 2023, closing the final chapter on a shared history that, despite its hardships, remained a defining part of Dickinson's personal story. At 94 years old, Angie Dickinson speaks with a clarity that only time can give. The glamour of Hollywood has long faded into memory, and what remains is honesty, unfiltered, unguarded, and deeply human. When she finally opens up about Ricky Nelson, it is not with scandal or regret, but with tenderness, understanding, and a wisdom shaped by decades of reflection. People always want to turn everything into a romance, Angie says gently. But what Ricky and I shared was more complicated and more meaningful than that. When Dickinson and Nelson met in the early 1960s, both were going through very different stages of fame. Angie was already an established actress, admired for her beauty and intelligence, while Ricky was America's golden boy, the teen idol with a perfect smile and a voice that defined a generation. He was adored, she recalls. And that kind of adoration can be a prison, especially when you're so young. The age difference between them was often whispered about, but Angie insists that the real divide wasn't age, it was experience. Ricky had been famous since childhood. I don't think people understood how much that took from him. He never really had the chance to discover who he was without an audience watching. She describes Nelson as thoughtful, shy beneath his public persona, and far more deep-thinking than his image suggested. He was sweet and polite, almost old-fashioned, but there was a sadness there, a loneliness. I saw it right away. According to Dickinson, Ricky struggled to balance the expectations placed on him with his desire to grow as an artist and as a man. He wanted to be taken seriously, not just screamed at. Angie dismisses the idea that their connection was driven by publicity or Hollywood games. There was no agenda, no manipulation, just two people talking, laughing, trying to understand each other in a world that didn't slow down for anyone. She pauses before adding, I think I may have been someone he could talk to honestly. As the years passed, their lives naturally moved in different directions. But Angie never forgot him or what he represented. Ricky was a warning, she says softly. Fame can freeze you in time. It can stop you from growing if you're not careful. Nelson's tragic death in 1985 hit her harder than she expected. It felt unfinished, like he never got the chance to live the life he wanted. That breaks my heart to this day. She admits that she often wondered who he might have become if he had been allowed to age, evolve, and escape the shadow of his own legend. Now at 94, Angie Dickinson speaks not with bitterness, but with compassion. Ricky wasn't weak. He was sensitive. And sensitivity is dangerous in a world that rewards image over truth. She smiles sadly. I hope people remember him for his talent and for the human being behind the fame. Time has stripped away the myths, leaving only memory and meaning. And in finally telling her truth, Angie Dickinson doesn't rewrite history. She humanizes it.